21 books, most recently The Lure and Pitfalls of MIRVs, from the first to the second nuclear age. And he has worked previously at Carnegie Endowment, the State Department's Arms Control and Disarmament Agency, and also he has received the Carnegie Endowment's Thérèse Delpech Memorial Award in 2015 for lifetime achievement in non-governmental work to reduce nuclear tensions. So that's Michael, and thank you, Michael, very much for accepting our invitation to speak to us today. As you can see, there is a great deal of interest in what you would have to say in terms of the age of uncertainty. This is a topic which Michael has chosen to give us a sense of how the international situation, international landscape is transforming, and what is the kind of role that the US, China, India really can play in that transition. The floor is yours, Michael.
Thank you, sir. There you are. Thank you very much. It is a privilege for me to be here. And I look forward to hearing what you have to say after what I have to say. My sense is, and I think you would agree, that we live in very uncertain times. Almost every important indicator of geopolitical power and influence is in flux. The exception being economic matters, which are a stabilizing factor at present, and a much needed one. Especially when U.S.-Russia relations are in flux, U.S.-China relations are in flux, U.S. geopolitical standing has been badly weakened, while U.S. power projection capabilities remain very strong, even after being misused in Afghanistan and Iraq. The ramifications of this odd juxtaposition of domestic political incoherence and military strength have yet to play out. Regional stability on the Korean Peninsula is a very, very big question. The framing question I would ask you to consider when thinking about the crisis that will be played out on the Korean Peninsula is whether or not the Trump administration can accept a mutual deterrence relationship with North Korea. I think that's the central frame. Regional stability in Southern Asia is also in flux. China, India, and Pakistan are considering how deeply to wade into an intensified nuclear competition revolving around counter-force capabilities. How much capability do you need to target military facilities? Military capability. Even Sino-Indian relations, the two Asian masters of the art of kicking the can down the road, have shown signs of flux. China and India, from my perspective, are heading in the direction of more intense incidents in peripheral areas and eventually at sea. Doklam isn't a one-off. And on top of this, the global nuclear order is in flux. The great achievements of the Cold War and immediately after, codified in treaties to reduce nuclear dangers and nuclear force levels, are unraveling. Some of these treaties are already behind us. Others are hanging by a thread. And here's another unusual juxtaposition. This unraveling process of the nuclear order is occurring when there are no new seekers of nuclear weapons, at least not yet. To be sure, North Korea and Iran both represent important challenges to the wobbly global nuclear order. And Mr. Trump has the capability, the capacity, the authority to make these challenges far worse. Iran's leadership has decided to take a 10-year timeout from bomb making. States that are usually hell-bent on getting the bomb do not take timeouts. This can change. More at this juncture as a result of the Trump administration's initiative than by Tehran's initiative. It would be folly for the Trump administration to nullify this deal when Tehran is in compliance. But it's quite possible. As for North Korea, the bomb and the means to deliver it are a matter of regime survival. They could also prompt regime change. Even with the unsettling developments in U.S.-Iran relations and U.S.-North Korea relations, we have yet to see other states seek the means to develop nuclear weapons. Now, most of us who've been in this nuclear business have presumed that challenges to the nuclear order would come from the bottom up, what political scientists call the nth country problem. But instead, the unraveling process of this global wobbly nuclear order is being led by the top and by the second tier, the tier of states with 3-digit-sized nuclear arsenals. The challenges posed by uncertainties in U.S. relations with Russia and China, and by the potential for an accelerated triangular nuclear competition in this part of the world. When added to the challenges posed by North Korea and Iran, and we do have a very wobbly nuclear order. On top of this, the military competition in space among Washington, Beijing, and Moscow is heating up. And we do not know the dimensions of this competition because it's not advertised. One advertises the ability to kill a satellite, but you usually do this only once because the debris generation problem is an indiscriminate problem. Once you've shown everybody else that you know how to do this, the competition continues. And it continues, unlike the nuclear competition, it continues out of sight. We're only in the early phases of cyber warfare. The Russian hacking of the U.S. election and other hacks by Russia and others suggest that there are no rules, not even tacit rules, for cyber warfare. And on top of all of this, we have the wrecking ball that is Donald Trump. Donald Trump is the most cost-effective investment that the Kremlin has ever made. In light of all this uncertainty and disturbance, how best to proceed? Speaking as an American citizen, in the United States, the need of the hour is to reclaim our democracy. Our democracy is in ill health. Donald Trump doesn't become president in a healthy democracy. One of our two major political parties has lost its moorings, and it has still been rewarded at the polls. Some of our media excel at the practice of disinformation and the incitement of grievances. You know, I was more down on the U.S. media than I was now after turning on the television. I mean, we have a similar problem with respect to media incitement. Our politics have been bent out of shape by the influence of money. Our politicians like to choose their voters rather than the other way around. And they have the means to do this by a practice that we call gerrymandering. That's the carving out of congressional districts so that one party rules in these congressional districts. One-party districts in the United States do not typically send compromisers to Capitol Hill. Our polarization ensures political dysfunction. So under all of these handicaps, the need of the hour is for Americans to reclaim our democracy. The need of the hour is to demonstrate to ourselves and to all those who care about democracy outside of America that our constitutional system of checks and balances still works. The need of the hour is to reaffirm the independence of the legislative and judicial branches of the U.S. government. If the evidence collected by independent judiciary authority warrants Mr. Trump's removal, I trust that the legislative and judicial branches will do their part. Then, we Americans can begin to repair the significant damage that Mr. Trump has already done to our political discourse, to the proper functioning of the U.S. government, and to U.S. relations with our friends and allies. What does all this uncertainty and disturbance portend for the future of U.S.-India relations and for this region? The foundations of U.S.-India relations are very, very strong. India is one of 3 countries that the Trump administration has really reached out to. The others being Israel and Saudi Arabia. There was considerable friction between the United States and India, at least below the level of the executive branch, around nuclear issues in the past. This focus of improved relations by means of a civil nuclear deal might have been necessary for a paradigm shift in bilateral relations, at least in India's view. But we could wait a long while for the Westinghouse deal to come through, as well as for India's accession to the Nuclear Suppliers Group. As a certified nuclear non-proliferation Ayatollah, I believed that the emphasis on nuclear cooperation as the driver for cooperation was unwise. I was skeptical about the results and sensitive to the downside risks. But we moved on. We moved on to what is the most important in our relationship. Trade, investment, defense cooperation, and other pillars of a strong, sustainable relationship. This bilateral relationship, as I have said, is now so strong that it has been unaffected by the first 6 months of the Trump presidency. One cannot say the same thing for our NATO partners or for U.S. ties with other partners of the United States in the Pacific. A strong, sustainable U.S.-India relationship is increasingly necessary and important, not to serve as a counterweight to China, which is an unwise, parochial, and unhelpful U.S. formulation. Instead, a strong, sustainable U.S.-India relationship is increasingly important to help a friendly state protect its interests against an increasingly assertive neighbor. My sense is that how fast and how far cooperation goes between Washington and Delhi will depend more on Delhi than on Washington. There is a consensus in Washington to do more, to help India defend its national security interests against a more assertive China. There's also a consensus in Washington that Pakistan should do more to address cross-border violence perpetrated by extremist groups. Funding streams are being conditioned. Funding streams for U.S.-Pakistan relations in the military sphere are being conditioned and reduced accordingly. U.S. influence in Pakistan has been reduced significantly, but hopefully not so much that Washington's role as the region's crisis manager in chief has been badly impaired. Trend lines in terms of the violence across the Kashmir Divide are up, and they are eerily reminiscent of the period before the attacks in 2001 on the State Assembly building in Srinagar, and then the Indian Parliament. The elements of another serious crisis on the subcontinent are very much in evidence. When one looks at the line of control, the situation in the Kashmir Valley, and the sorry state of India-Pakistan relations. My bottom line is something you already know. That India faces daunting challenges with both of its nuclear-armed neighbors. I'm reminded of a passage in the writing of a French big thinker by the name of Raymond Aron that I'd like to call your attention to. I'm paraphrasing. Aron wrote that crises have become the substitute for warfare among nuclear-armed adversaries. In the nuclear age, crises are the substitute for wars. And how crises are resolved or not resolved can indicate who's up and who's down. In a period of great flux, in a period of great uncertainty, that is when we can expect crises. That is when you can expect crises. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Michael, for a very thoughtful and thought-provoking presentation. I think you have covered a great deal of ground. I think the running theme through your talk is uncertainty of various kinds, and truly a rather worrying picture that you have painted of the world today. You have very kindly agreed to take questions from this very distinguished audience here. But let me ask the first question, which is, I was a little intrigued by what you said, that in this first 6 months of the Trump administration, there are 3 countries which, in a sense, have got off rather well with the Trump administration: Israel, Saudi Arabia, and India. A rather disparate bunch. And I'm wondering what is there in terms of a running theme of these 3 countries that they have in fact been, in a sense, privileged partners of the United States under Trump.
Don't look for coherence in themes. I can correlate themes between India and Israel. I can't correlate themes that include Saudi Arabia.
And what correlates India and Israel?
Beleaguered democracy with difficult neighborhoods, strong domestic lobbies. I'll start and end there.
Thank you very much. So let me open the floor to questions from the audience. Please make your question short. No commentaries, please. Please identify yourself and any organization that you represent. Yes, sir.
I myself, sir, I am doing law from the university presently. Okay, sir, my question is, you told that US misused its power in Iraq and Afghanistan. Can it now repeat again with North Korea? No, or North Korea, you know that not like Afghanistan or Iraq.
Would you like to take 3-4 questions to that? Okay. Yes, please. Any others who have any questions? Yeah, that.
Michael, at the Ayatollah, we've been used to your fatwas against India. But we respect you for your commitment to the cause of nuclear disarmament. Now, 10 years ago, there was a ray of hope when an American president thought that he could reverse the process. But unfortunately, the opposition came not from countries like ours. It came from right where you are, from the generals in the Pentagon, who refused to reduce the salience of nuclear weapons in America's defense. Why is it that you've not been able to convince the group that is right there, which alone can make a difference in the process? Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you, sir. I want to ask 3 questions.
Oh, there's too many.
Okay. So the first one is, you put that framework to the US-North Korea relationship by saying, can US accept a nuclear deterrent relationship with North Korea? And I'm wondering, is there a choice? Will it not have to accept such a relationship? I remember in the early 2000s when Christopher Hill said, we will not live with a nuclear North Korea. We've been living with a nuclear North Korea now for so many years. And it's happened in the past, just to put things in perspective, that China was considered a rogue nation, and US did develop a nuclear deterrent relationship with China over a period of time. So how do you think this will pan out with North Korea? My second question is what Ambassador Lalit Mansingh mentioned about American own take on nuclear weapons. I mean, there's so much more talk about even tactical use of nuclear weapons in the US, coming from some of the very senior serving generals, and one wonders what this does to others who are thinking along those lines, because it just gives grist to the mill then. And thirdly, on China's assertiveness, we've seen countries big and small cowing under Chinese pressure. The OBOR is a good example of how countries from Europe came running in to be a part of that enterprise. Has the US noticed that India is perhaps the only country that stood up to the pressure that's coming from China?
Okay, Michael. I think two questions relating to Korea. One, whether are we going headed in the same direction as US headed with Afghanistan or Iraq, and is that what is likely to happen? And I think a very important question, is there a choice in terms of whether the US will accept a deterrent relationship with North Korea or not? I mean, is that not already a question which is no longer relevant in a sense? And of course, we all remember the Prague speech of President Obama, and also we remember the articles written by the four horsemen, Kissinger, Schultz, and others, who actually argued that the time had come to relook at nuclear disarmament. And then suddenly everything falls back again to where we were.
Yes, the United States has lived with a nuclear capability in North Korea for a while. But it wasn't a capability that could reach the United States. And therein lies the difference. Israel has not accepted a mutual nuclear deterrent relationship with any of its neighbors. Will the United States fall into the same camp with respect to North Korea? You're exactly right, Manpreet, to point out that if we could live with Joseph Stalin and the bomb, if we could live with Mao and the bomb, these are two gentlemen with quite a lot of blood on their hands. Why not live with Kim Jong-un? He's small potatoes compared to Mao and Stalin. The difference between earlier acceptance of a mutual deterrent relationship and the current situation, one of the differences, is that preemptive use of force in the United States, which was discounted in these earlier episodes. We were not Imperial Japan. We do not fight by means of surprise attack and preventive war. That line of thinking has over time morphed into a belief in the preventive use of force. And this belief on the part of some has not diminished even after Iraq. And I believe that the proper frame of looking at this building crisis between the United States and North Korea is the question I asked. I do not detect from the Trump administration a willingness to accept a mutual deterrent relationship with North Korea. Maybe this is all bluff. Maybe cooler heads will prevail. Maybe the Chinese will become deus ex machina. I don't know. But I lay this out here because it's a disturbing thought. This business about mini nukes, and the Pentagon's going to take another run at this. They're going to study it, and they will run into the same buzzsaw that they've run into before in the George W. Bush administration. The most important norm that's holding the nuclear order from becoming completely off its axis is the norm built over 7 decades, not to create a mushroom cloud on a battlefield. If this norm goes by the boards, as it might in the event of military action against Pyongyang, think about what the nuclear order would look like now. And it doesn't matter if the yield is only 10 kilotons, or 20 kilotons, or 3 kilotons, it's still a mushroom cloud. So this norm has to be protected at all costs. Without it, we're in deep trouble. Regrettably, the Pentagon, and it's not just the Pentagon, it's Republicans on Capitol Hill, has not seen the wisdom of reducing the salience of nuclear weapons by means of continued cuts. We acknowledge that the Comprehensive Test Ban Treaty is, while it has not entered into force, is an important instrument of stabilizing the nuclear order. We acknowledge that. Although there are some who would like to tear up this treaty, through indirect means, of course, by starving it of funds. Every test of a nuclear device is a testament to its utility, either political leverage or military utility. Every test of a nuclear device is, look at me, don't mess with me. And that's why it's so important for this nuclear order that is wobbly to maintain moratoria on nuclear testing. One country doesn't agree. That defines that country as an outcast, as an outlier. The rest of us are content with not demonstrating strength by means of mushroom clouds underground or above ground. If we lose that, where is our nuclear order? So what caused the momentum of the reductions process? What caused the deflation of President Obama's ambition? I think it's simple. When the world is in flux, when the world is an uncertain place, when relationships between major powers are at inflection points, when one major power does not regard lines on maps to be sacrosanct, when the other major power is flexing its muscles in ways that make its neighbors uncertain themselves. Republicans on Capitol Hill and the Pentagon are not about to reduce the salience of these weapons. They're not about to agree to deeper cuts. Because these weapons are totems. We haven't gotten over them in my country. So we're stuck. We are in the mid. We're not stuck. We're watching the unraveling of these major, extraordinary accomplishments to control nuclear danger and to reduce it. That's why this process is stuck.
Thank you. Yes, Mr. Nance.
I have two very brief questions. One is, do you give Trump the option of staying on for his full term? And secondly, what is basically the problem with American democracy? You have sketched out some aspects of it, but is there a deeper reason?
Yes.
Mr. Krepon, the Obama administration with some other countries tried to bring about capping of the nuclear facilities and in Iran basically. All these years they tried, it was a great achievement at the time. But after Trump has come, the situation has changed now. So do you think that Iran may go back on the promise and start the nuclear development again?
Thank you very much, Mr. Krepon. One very brief question.
Identify yourself for Mr.
Yes, Suresh Goel, retired. My question is very brief, really. You described the ages of uncertainty, which I would actually call the dangerous times, really. More or less coinciding with over the last 6 months with Trump's presidency. My sense is that probably these ages began much before, and China is actually the emerging power is responsible. Would you like to comment on that?
I'll come to it. So maybe we'll take these three. Then
We have to wait and see, sir, what our special counsel comes up in terms of evidence. We don't remove a president for being immature. We don't remove a president because of his Twitter account. We need to see evidence of what I believe to be a terrible crime. And if there has been collusion associated with that crime, then in my judgment it warrants impeachment. It is a crime to democracy to collude with a foreign power to affect an election result. if we hold our democracy dear, we have to protect it from such collusion. I was asked the other day by someone, what's with this Russophobia? Can't you guys get over it? And my response is, I cannot get over it if there is evidence of collusion between a political campaign and a foreign power to swing the election. You want me to get over that? What is my democracy worth if I'm ready to get over that? So let's see the facts. Let's see the evidence. And then we'll decide. Then it will be up to the Congress to decide. The problems of American democracy, I could go on here. They run very deep. They didn't begin with Donald Trump. Donald Trump is the manifestation of a democracy in ill health. And we have to attend to it. We have to attend to the problems of money in politics, of fixing congressional districts to determine which party wins. Our democracy is precious. It's what makes us who we are. And we have a big fight on our hands. But there are a lot of people willing to fight. Will Iran go back on its promises? If the Trump administration walks away from a deal that Tehran is adhering to? I would expect so. I would expect a resumption of enrichment. I would expect increased stockpiles of fissile material. How far Tehran will go with that is another question. But I would think it would make the points. The uncertainties that I've described far predate Mr. Trump. I would predate them to the decisions by the Kremlin not to accept the post-Cold War order that the Clinton and Bush administrations created. Not to accept the expansion of NATO all the way so far east and to include former states of the Soviet Union. And once that pushback occurred, once Russia got off the ground after the dissolution of the Soviet Union and a Great Depression comparable to the Great Depression that we faced in between wars. I guess that's when I would predate the unraveling process. If one looks at China's behavior, it's not just because of Trump, it predates Trump. We were talking at lunch about when we would when we would predate China's assertiveness. Some would predate it to the targeting, accidental, of the Chinese embassy in Belgrade. You got people in this audience who can predate better than I can. But it's certainly not a recent Trump-like phenomenon.
Yeah, but Trump has obviously accentuated all these various things. I just wanted to, before I get to the other questions, just ask you. You mentioned that there is an unraveling process which seems to be in evidence as far as the global nuclear order is concerned, and there are signs of that. How will this play itself out? I mean, it's obviously a very risky and dangerous situation, but if it really begins to unravel, what is likely to happen?
It's a very relevant question. The constraints on national missile defenses is gone, which also means that the likelihood of much deeper cuts on strategic offensive forces becomes more and more remote. So now we're looking at a treaty governing Euro missiles. And there has been a violation of a central provision of this treaty by Russia. There are no negotiations to address this violation. Our Congress, Republicans, have inserted language in both the House and the Senate defense authorization bills that the United States should not proceed with further strategic arms reductions unless and until this violation of the INF Treaty, Intermediate Range Nuclear Forces Treaty, is corrected. In any event, there was severe misgivings on the part of our nuclear enclave to reduce strategic forces further until we take a look at how much of an increase China will pursue. China is putting more than one warhead on certain of its missiles. They're building out, as you well know, a sea-based deterrent. They're moving forward on new land-based naval missiles. If the INF Treaty and the Strategic Arms Reduction Treaty unravel, there are no on-site inspections, cooperative monitoring of nuclear forces will go by the boards. And then it's everybody for himself. So we have states, China, India, Pakistan, North Korea, are clearly increasing their nuclear stockpiles. The United States, the Russian Federation are at present holding to numbers that have been agreed to. Great Britain and France are the least movable parts in this equation. Israel, we don't know much about. We could be looking at a nuclear order that is stabilized to some extent by two norms and not by treaty arrangement. Those norms are the ones I talked about. No battlefield use, no nuclear testing. These norms are huge. They are central pillars to a wobbly nuclear order. And if we lose one or both, then it's certainly every man for himself.
Well, I mean, that has obviously already been violated as far as our neighborhood is concerned. So, yeah. So let me get on to the next round. Which you wanted to say?
In this part of the world, many of us feel, in a benign way, the US is abdicating its leadership of the world to China. What do you have to say to that? One. Second, Obama was temperamentally very different, or is very different from Hillary Clinton. That was his phase when Indo-US came closer. In the event Hillary takes over the leadership of US, do you think the India-US relations will continue at the same level?
Okay. You wanted to ask a question?
You pointed to so many gray areas and doubts within the US domestic situation. What I would like to ask you is this notion of the US as the indispensable power and the notions associated with it, exceptionalism, indispensable power, has it kind of taken a dent in the Pentagon, in the establishment, psychologically and
Chandra?
To take you back to the nuclear order. Today, with the conventional weapons are so precise, so powerful, so capable, and you have much more transparency thanks to technology today. What does that do to deterrence? Surely you can, most of the uses that people had for nuclear weapons, except deterring other nuclear weapons, and all those military uses can be performed in other ways. And what does that do to deterrence?
Okay. Why don't you take these three questions and then we'll get to the next one.
I would not characterize what's happening as an abdication of U.S. leadership. I would characterize it as a fritting away of U.S. leadership by terribly unsound decisions. Sometimes when people ask me this question here, it's in reference to the South China Sea and these atolls. When you choose to exercise leadership, demonstrate leadership, it's important to figure out where the best place to do that is. We have a pretty powerful naval presence in the Pacific. One would hope that we would demonstrate capability soundly in places of our comparative advantage. Other times when I hear this thought in India, it's couched in the context of, why don't you do more? We expect more from you. We expect more of your help. You've let us down. And my rejoinder to that is so old India. This is not rising India. This is an India I came to visit a long time ago. And if you take your place in this region seriously, then what are you doing to secure it? Or are you waiting on the U.S. to help? The U.S. will be of help. I'm sure of that. But just as you expect more from America, we expect more from you. Hillary, I believe, has retired from politics. I don't foresee her seeking the Democratic nomination again. Nobody has a crystal ball when it comes to U.S. politics. And we've proven it. But I don't think she's the one. U.S. indispensability, U.S. exceptionalism. We've frittered away our indispensability. We've frittered away our exceptionalism. How exceptional are we when our electoral college puts Donald Trump in the White House? In a different way. There is a revolution in counterforce capability. It's not with respect to nuclear. That revolution happened in the 1970s. And you can figure it out. And China can figure it out. Pakistan can figure it out. It's not, there's nothing new to discover. What is new is a revolution in conventional counterforce capability with extraordinary application on a battlefield. Without this nuclear business getting in the way. That's where the action is. At least in my country.
Okay, next round, please.
Thank you, Chair. Honorable Speaker, you mentioned about, I just stated again, counter-force capabilities. That when you talk of counter-force, you're also implying in both countries nuclear weapons. Is this, are we now dividing deterrence into two categories of counter-force category and a counter value categories? Is deterrence of nuclear weapons come to that level, and is there that sheen of deterrence wearing away? Thank you.
An American professor of mine once told me that there is a phrase in America where you say that I will bet my farm. There's a challenge. And I will bet my farm that the person who told you about their Russophobia was an outsider and not an American. And I will tell you why the person thinks that way, because to a great degree it seems from the outside that that Americans today, when with regard to the election hacking, takes a stance that is very hypocritical. There was a research done at Carnegie Mellon. It was a PhD thesis that was submitted in 2017 by somebody called Dov Levin. And he came up, his findings were that his research period looked in from 1946 to 2000, 54 years. And in that period, he showed that 80 times 80 times the United States intervened into other countries. Second, very, very far below was the Soviet Union. The research also showed that about 2/3 of that are covert, that is not known, and 1/3 of it is known, beginning with 1953 Iran, 1954 Guatemala, 1961 Cuba, 1984 Nicaragua,
Okay,
and so forth.
basically double standards.
And so that's one question.
Yeah.
The second question is with regard to Russia and Ukraine. In the 1990s, an important diplomat from America, George Kennan, in the late 1990s, he gave a very interesting interview to the New York Times in which he suggested that the expansion of NATO to the doorsteps of Russia would push back the Russians and they would react at a point in time. And at that point in time, Americans will react by saying that, look, we knew this was going to happen. Right? In other words, John J. Mearsheimer came up with a very interesting article last year or year before in which he made the same argument.
What is your question? Because we don't have time.
My question largely comes from these arguments as to how do you see your theory about Russian intervention vis-a-vis these things?
Yeah, that history of US involvement. Ajay?
I'm Ajay Shukla, journalist, so my question is rooted in the present. The ongoing dispute with China, if it escalates, if it turns into war, if India finds itself in dire straits, how much pressure do you reckon this will place on India's no first use commitment? How do you see India reacting to that? How do you see it playing out? And a linked question to that, in case the situation becomes really bad, I would say a repeat of 1962, but something along those lines, would America react in the same way as it did in 1962, or would there be a more hands-off attitude? What are the dynamics at play in that?
Okay. And after this, I'm sorry, I will have time only for another 3 questions. So, all yours.
Just so everybody's on the same page. Counterforce capabilities means targeting military targets. Counter-value capabilities means the targeting of cities where precision really isn't needed. You get your point across pretty much wherever the warhead lands. In my point of view, the name of the game, if you're going into counterforce, is conventional counterforce. Usable military utility. Nuclear counterforce, any use, hinges on extremely questionable assumptions. The assumption of escalation dominance or escalation control. So you've gotten yourself in a circumstance where 2 adversaries find themselves in a nuclear exchange. And if you are unable to prevent that, you are somehow able to assure escalation dominance or escalation control on a nuclear battlefield? What presumption. So, I'm not against counterforce. Spend your money wisely, do it unconventional. But China, India, and Pakistan are all faced with the same decision of how deeply to go into the big money of nuclear counterforce. You all have the ability to do this. It's not hard. And what happens historically is when states increase their stockpile of nuclear warheads and the means to deliver them, they also increase their target lists. How many cities are there, by the way? Not many. How many warheads have you got? And there's at least for some of us, there was an ineluctable progression from counter value to counter force. And then once you get into counter force, you get into damage limitation. Limited the amount of damage that the other guy can do to you. And there's no end of targets, if that's where you go. So this is an important period for you, and for China, and for Pakistan. Pakistan has already declared military requirements for counterforce with respect to its smallest range nuclear capability and its longest range capability. They're military guys. They make the decisions. It's natural. What will you do? What will China do? Beware of moral equivalence. It is such a seductive argument. Oh, the United States did this in Guatemala in 1956. Therefore, it's equal to what Russia has done today. You take a look at all of those countries where the U.S. is said to have interfered or did indeed interfere. You show me who's running those countries. The United States doesn't determine who wins those elections. It did then, not now. What we have here, in my judgment, is as important as Russia's disregard for the national sovereignty of its neighboring states. If you disregard lines on a map and your neighbor's sovereignty, you also disregard sovereignty by trying to swing elections. Are we to accept that because of the removal of Guzman in Guatemala in 1956? Come on. Ajay, for me, the analogy right now with respect to U.S., Korea, and I'll get to India, China. For me, the analogy is 1956. It's not 1962. We've talked about this. For Great Britain, Nasser's nationalization of the canal was unacceptable. The question was a red line of nationalization. And we know what followed. And by the way, in that crisis, there was a second crisis in Hungary. So, when we are looking at a world of uncertainty, a world that is prone to crises, we also have to think about if there is a crisis here, where else maybe there are crises where somebody's taking advantage of somebody else. The analogy that I fear is just as the UK said, Egypt cannot nationalize this canal. We cannot lose control over this canal. If the frame is North Korea cannot have a nuclear capability to destroy the U.S. Army, then we're looking at an extremely intense crisis. And to me, and I could be wrong, road building in the peripheral areas is the functional equivalent of creating atolls in the South China Sea. And if I'm right about that, then this is certainly not a one-off, regardless of how it's resolved, if it's resolved. And it raises important questions of how India protects its own interests in peripheral areas for defense spending, the raising of forces, equipment, ammunition, and things of that sort. And the new India won't be asking what is America doing for us lately? Not doing enough. I think the new India is, what are we doing for ourselves? The U.S. will help. I'm quite confident of that. If you get into a tight spot. There's precedent for that. I'm quite sure in my own mind. The U.S. will come to your support. I don't think this has anything to do with no first use. It's not about nuclear. It's about conventional.
Shankar's question. Okay, so last round. This side, please.
Thank you, sir. My name is Saurabh Roth, I'm PhD of International Studies. My question is, sir, we'll be hearing a lot about from isolating NATO members by demanding that they meet a minimum 2% defense spending requirement. But isn't he in a way expanding NATO by increasing their military expenditure? And how wise would such a move be with regards to Russia? Thank you.
One more.
So, what do you believe will be the immediate as well as the long-term goals or frictions between and disputes which might reflect on international forums if later on it's proved that Russian intervention did exist in the US elections? Because the time period right now is 6 months, and if later on in next 6 months it's proved, so what will be all the resolutions which have taken place in the UN, NATO or different international forums in the past year?
You have the last word.
Professor
Sorry. I have already asked Mr.
Besides nuclear weapons, terrorism, counter-terrorism, and climate change are other major sources of anxiety and uncertainty. Now, on climate change, do you think Donald Trump has already taken steps which will create major crisis and will that lead to some combinations of countries to face the situation? I have in mind, sort of disowning the US-China during Obama visit to Beijing, agreement on climate change, or tensions between EU position and US on climate change, and things like that. What do you see the unfolding process?
Okay. The last one, please. You wanted to ask a question? Yeah. Quickly, very short.
Do you think there are any chances of nuclear attack by the terrorists on US or in any part of the world?
Okay. Okay, on that very depressing note.
This is why I follow baseball in America. And the tending of my garden. I agree with Donald Trump about this 2% business. I agree. I think our NATO allies aren't doing enough. You know, we are obliged by the NATO relationship, the NATO partnership, to come to the aid of 3 NATO states that were formerly part of the Soviet Union, states that have a combined standing army strength of 36,000. Are we not supposed to ask our NATO partners to contribute 2% of their GDP for alliance defense? I'm okay with that. I'm more than okay with that. The Russia problem for us, and I think for others, is not just about interference in a democratic election. We have to come to the bottom of that. And if there is evidence of collusion, we already know they interfered. The issue is whether there was collusion. The collusion question will be resolved through our democratic processes. The interference aspect, we have to protect our democracy by protecting the sanctity of the vote against cyber interference. There are things we can do. In my country, we used to write our ballot. And then we decided, no, that's so inefficient. We're going to do this electronically. And we did that without safeguarding the electronic ballot. Well, I think we have to fix that. So that's our job. What do you do about the other part of the Russia problem, which is that Russia has violated the sovereignty of Georgia, Moldova, and especially Ukraine, and has annexed part of Ukraine to become part of the Russian Federation. That is a harder problem than protecting our ballot. And it's one that doesn't have an easy fix. Climate change is not my ballpark. But I will say that a lot of the American people and American governors do not agree with the position that the president has taken and his environmental non-protection agency administrator has taken. And these states are taking it upon themselves to do what they are able to address this awful problem, devastating problem. Dirty bombs, non-state actors. There were so many possibilities when the Soviet Union dissolved. The Soviet Union had like 20,000 nuclear warheads distributed throughout God knows how many time zones. Extraordinary stockpiles of fissile material for bombing. Where was the dirty bomb? Where was the non-state actor? The United States stepped in big time to improve security at very sensitive sites. That's part of the answer, but it doesn't completely answer this question. Why hasn't it already happened? And it could happen tomorrow, no doubt. But to my way of thinking, an important reason why it hasn't happened is look how much damage you can do to the psychology of a people, to the sense of insecurity for a country with a semi-automatic weapon. The guys who attacked the Indian Parliament didn't have fissile material. They didn't need it. The guys that attacked Mumbai didn't have fissile material. They didn't need it. This is a serious problem. But it's one of many in terms of how do we protect our societies against those who wish us harm. And you're in the middle of it.
Thank you very much. Very reassuring, I must say. I think I do not really have to summarize what has been an extremely stimulating conversation, I would say, with someone who is really very highly respected in the United States, internationally, and has shared with us very, very valuable insights with respect to what we see as a very challenging landscape that all of us are living in. Michael, you said that we are right in the middle of it. I think all of us are right in the middle of it. So at least in that sense, it is a very even playing field, I would imagine. Thank you very much, Michael, for spending time with us. You have been extraordinarily generous with your time, and I think all of us, you will agree that this has been an extremely stimulating afternoon for all of us. It's been quite a treat to have you with us and have this very, very educative, I would say, conversation. So let's give our speaker a